one question you may have is, how do I then apply adjustment layers so they only affect one thing, right? Because if you use an adjustment layer, it should be affecting everything below it. So if I have multiple images, so what if I just quickly, I'm just gonna quickly mask out the top part of these rocks. And since I did it backwards, if I click on my shape and I go to Window and Properties, if I just invert this real quick or do Command I can do that. And let's just clean this up with the brush by making sure I'm in the black. And so I can switch these. Ooh, I pressed X again. Remember, X is going to, and let's bump this up to 100. Just cleaning up, there we go. And let's hide this. And let's say I do something with this background. Let's get this one. And I go to my quick selection tool again. Just select inside here, and that's totally fine. And then also mask this out. Command I, bring this back. And let's do a solid color behind all of this. And now I'm going to put this behind everything. So now what you can see is I have 3 separate layers, each thing here with their own individual identity, right? If I go to my adjustments and I go to black and white, notice that it affects everything below. If I drag this black and white in between my top layer, which is my rock, and let's rename this so it's rock, and these are clouds, right? Everything below is going to be affected. But what if I only want this black and white to affect this rock? What I can do is right click on my adjustment layer and say create clipping mask. And you'll see that this then has this little arrow that comes down onto the rock, and it only affects the layer right below it. And so this is great for if you're trying to have effects that are only on one thing. So for example, if I duplicate this rock doing Command J and I drag it above, notice that it disrupted what I had before. So let's move this here like that. This black and white is affecting everything. Right click on your layer, create clipping mask, and now it is only affected on this rock layer. And I can have multiple doing the same thing, so they're cumulative. So for example, if I take this black and white and I turn down the opacity so it's just a little bit of black and white so it looks a little bit desaturated, and then I go in with my hue and saturation and I colorize, notice that now everything is colorized. Let's do a weird green. Ugh. It's gross. But what if I only want that to affect my rock? Right click, create clipping mask. And now you can see both the black and the white and the hue and saturation are affecting that. And so if I turn off my black and white, you barely see a difference there. Let's turn this just back up. That's a very subtle effect. So let's add in one more. Let's do brightness and contrast. And let's bump up the brightness and right click and create clipping mask. So here you can see that brightness and contrast is just affecting that one layer below. And so this can be really helpful for combining different effects, combining different elements. And same thing if I wanted only, a certain thing to affect this cloud. So if I go in and I do a gradient map on the clouds, this allows me to apply the colors of whatever the darkest colors are in my shape, are in my form. They're going to be affected by the gradient here. So let's do, if I did like a red, notice that all the blacks become red, and then all the whites, let's see, let's do an orange. We'll actually go like into the way that you might see in some contemporary films where it's a range of orange and blue. It's like this darker blue. And you'll see this a lot to help create certain moods and feelings inside some contemporary films. And notice that all the blacks of my layer here became blue on this end, and all the lights become. So here is where I maybe might turn down the opacity of this just to give myself a little bit of, so it's not fully integrated into it. And then I can right click and create clipping mask. And now you can see that that gradient map is really just on this one layer here. It's also kind of fun that these rocks start to look like cabbage. I'm into this. It's kind of weird. Cool. And so you can see how these can start to be combined together to both create, surrealist landscapes or, just being able to affect certain elements of your image.